Do not walk alone at dusk, Cadet. Aaron Malik walked alone anyway. The sky above the academy glowed violet as the twin suns dipped behind the jagged tree line. The jungle, beyond the perimeter fence, breathed like a living creature. Warm mist rolled between the trunks and strange lights flickered deep within the foliage. Tonight was the survival trilogy. Cadet would be dropped into the outer forest without weapons. They would navigate through predator territory and reach the beacon tower before dawn. Anyone who panicked would fail. Anyone who froze would be carried back by drones. Zaroon adjusted the straps on his pack and stepped toward the launch platform. Around him stood cadets from a dozen species, tall, armored Varaxians with silver-streaked scales, broad Keth with heavy bone ridges along their brows, lean Aarons with narrow black eyes that missed nothing. They all avoided looking at the jungle instructor. Velka towered above them, his voice rolled across the platform like distant thunder. You will be hunted. Silence settled. You are not prey unless you choose to be. One by one the drop pods launched and vanished over the trees. When Arn's turn came, he stepped inside without hesitation. The hatch sealed. The pod shot forward and then downward whined, roared for a heartbeat, then impact. The hatch split open and damp air rushed in. Arun stepped onto thick moss. The pod lifted away, leaving him alone. The forest swallowed the last echo. He stood still. The academy had taught them the first lesson of any unknown world. Listen before you move. He heard insects clicking in layered rhythms. He heard leaves brushing against one another. He heard something large shifting far to the east. He began walking north toward the faint pulse of the beacon on his wristband. The ground dipped and rose under tangled roots. Bioluminescent growths painted the trunks in soft blue light. The air smelled of wet soil and iron. After 20 minutes, the forest changed. The insects stopped. The breeze died. Arun felt eyes on him. He did not turn his head. Predators chased what ran. A low rumble drifted between the Tresavraxian cubs, not adults, but not harmless. They hunted in coordinated packs and tested larger prey before committing. A shadow slid across his path. Another moved behind him. He stepped into a small clearing where pale light spilled through the canopy. He set his pack down slowly and straightened. 4 shapes emerged from the undergrowth. Each cub stood as tall as his waist, thick, dark fur covered, layered muzzle. Silver lines traced their spines, for amber eyes burned on each narrow face. Their jaws parted to reveal curved fangs. They spread out around him. May perfect circle. Rune breathed slow and steady. The nearest cub crouched ready to spring. Another edged closer from behind. He turned with measured calm so none stood at his back. The circle tightened in. Steps 8-6. The largest cub moved forward. Its fur bristled and a deep growl vibrated through the clearing. Arun stepped toward it, not fast, not slow, just forward. The growl faltered. Predators expected retreat. He took another step. The cub hesitated. Aaron felt fear in his chest. It was real, it was sharp, but he let it exist without obeying. Eth remembered the old earth lessons early humans had survived. Among beasts larger and faster than themselves, they had done it not with claws, but with nerve. They had learned to hold ground. The cub lunged. Arun did not flinch. At the last instant, he released a sharp, commanding shout from deep in his chest. The sound cut through the clearing like a crack of thunder. The cub skidded to a halt inches away. Its eyes widened. It had expected panic. It saw none. Arun held its gaze. Then he stepped forward again. The cub retreated 1 pace. Others shifted uneasily. Cub darted from his left, testing his balance. Arun pivoted smoothly and fixed it with the same steady stare. He did not bare his teeth. He did not snarl. He simply looked at it as if measuring distance. Confidence traveled in silence. The cub slowed. Circle Wavedoran bent and picked up a fallen branch. He snapped it across his knee with a clean, sharp motion. The crack echoed between the trunks. The cub's flinch strength displayed without frenzy, tossed the pieces aside and walked directly. At the largest cub's steps, cub retreated again. The others mirrored its movement. Tarun felt the shift like a tide turning. He smiled, not in mockery, not in challenge, just come. The largest cub broke eye contact. First it released a short bark and turned into the brush. The others followed within seconds. The clearing stood empty. The forest slowly exhaled. Insects resumed their stronger rune, picked up his pack and continued. North he did not hurry. 2 kilometers later he heard frantic movement ahead. Branches snapped, heavy breathing echoed against stone. He slipped behind a thick trunk and looked over. Varaxian Cadet from his unit stood trapped against a rock wall. 3 cubs circled him. The cadet slashed wildly with a jagged stone. His breath came in sharp bursts. Fear thickened the air. The cubs pressed closer, sensing weakness. Sarun stepped into the clearing. The cubs froze, recognizing him there. Varaxian Cadet hissed at him to run. Arun ignored it. He walked to stand beside the trapped cadet. Stand tall, he said quietly. The Varaxian trembled, but straightened. Stop. Thrashing the cub nearest them, snarled and crouched. Harun stepped forward again. Calm, measured, certain. He locked eyes with the lead cub. No shout. This time, no sudden motion, just steady advance. Cub faltered. The other 2 shifted back. Harun took another step. The lead cub turned away first. The others followed, melting into shadow. The clearing fell silent. The Varaxian stared at him. You had no weapon. Arun tapped his temple eye. That they walked together toward the beacon tower, which now glowed faint blue through the trees. The other cadets gathered there. Some limped, some bore shallow claw marks. Instructor Velka waited at the base, scanning each arrival. When Arun and the Varaxian stepped into the light, murmurs spread through the group. Cubs surrounded. They ran. Velka fixed his heavy gaze on Arun. You encountered predators. Yes, you are uninjured. Yes, you. Harun met the instructor's eyes. I did not act like prey. Silence followed. Velka gave a slow nod. Lesson acknowledged. Dawn broke across Talrek's prime, painting the canopy in pale gold from the distant shadows. The cubs watched the gathered cadets. They would grow into apex hunters. One day they would challenge even larger threats, but they had learned something new. Some creatures did not collapse when Saran fed back. At the academy, the story moved through corridors and mess halls. The human who smiled at predators. The human who walked forward instead of back. Some exaggerated it, others doubted it. Tarun ignored both. He cleaned his boots and prepared for the next drill. Weeks later, Instructor Velka addressed the full cohort in the central hall. Most battles are decided before the first strike, he said. Fear announces defeat. Composure announces strength. His eyes rested briefly on Arun. Remember, the forest. The Varaxian cadet who had been cornered approached Arun that evening. You were afraid, he said just then. Why did you smile? Rune considered the question. Because they needed to see I was not afraid of standing there. The Varaxian absorbed that quietly in Talrek's prime. The cubs continued to hunt smaller creatures. They avoided upright figures who moved without haste. The memory lingered and their instincts sat. The academy. The lesson endured. Strength was not always in muscle or fangs. Sometimes it was in stillness. Sometimes it was in the simple act of stepping forward. In a moonlit clearing on a distant world, for predators had surrounded a lone human. Cadeti did not roar. He did not strike. He smiled and they ran.